Welcome to the 60 Plus podcast.
I'm Janet.
And I'm Joe. How are you today, Janet?
I'm good. I'm really doing great today.
Are you?
Yeah.
Especially good? Why?
Well, I had a really good night's sleep. That's always a good start, right?
It is. It's important to get a good night's sleep.
Yeah. So I am ready to rock on this podcast that we're doing this morning.
What are we going to be doing today? Who are we talking to? What are we talking about?
It's a Mythbuster. We're going to bust open another myth. And so you ask, what is the myth that we're going to bust?
Okay, I'll ask that. What is the myth that we're going to bust?
Well, there's this thing about being over 60, you don't know how to do technology.
Oh, I disagree with this one. I disagree with the myth.
Well, we always have to disagree with the myths. That's why we're busting them. So it's actually funny because I was talking to a group of Gen Zs, if you will, young 20-somethings, and we were talking about different demographics. And we were breaking them down, Gen Z, millennials, baby boomers. And I said, so let's talk about these different demographics and what makes them different. Let's start with baby boomers. Tell me about baby boomers. What do they like? And the first comment that I got from this group was they read newspapers. And then the second one was they're technosaurs.
Technosaurs. So like dinosaurs.
And they don't know how to use technology.
That's evident in this podcast, by the way, with the technology that we have to use.
Well, we don't need to divulge all our secrets, Joe.
Not all.
Yeah. So we actually have to be examples of why this is not true, which is why we have a special guest today.
Okay. Who's our guest?
Well, I don't know. Why don't you tell us?
Our guest is our friend Gregg, who is 60 plus. Hi, Gregg.
Good morning. Nice to see the both of you.
Same here.
Good to see you.
And the reason we asked Gregg in is everyone has to admit, you're over 60, right?
Yeah, well over.
Well over.
I'm almost into my mid-60s, which is even hard to say out loud.
Middle of the hill.
Is it hard to say?
Well, it's not actually hard to say, but it's emotionally difficult.
Yeah, because...
Why?
Because when I look at my life and I look at what's ahead versus what's behind, it's a much shorter period of time. No matter what I do about it, it's going to be a much shorter period of time.
We can't control that, right? So that's where we have to kind of just let go of being worried about it because guess what?
Right. And I'm not worried about it. I am just absolutely enjoying where I am today.
Good.
I'm happy in every way. I'm lucky to be healthy in every way. And life is good. It's not a bad thing to get older necessarily, but I just know that there's a limited time to do some of the things I want to do.
Yes.
I can sugarcoat it as much as I want.
Right.
It's still a fact.
True.
It is. And the reason we had you in, though, we were talking about technology, right?
Yes.
And Gregg works in the technology industry.
Yes.
So you work in a company that deals in cybersecurity.
Correct.
Cutting edge, bleeding edge stuff.
Yep.
And do you have a lot of background in that?
So when I first started professionally, I worked for a Boston University. I worked in financial institution marketing, and then I started working for an embedded multi-computer company, which did some very sophisticated...
What the hell is that? No.
They were basically building sensors that were used in all sorts of CT machines, MRI machines, and in defense to take in signals, process those signals, and make them machine readable or human readable at the time. So I got introduced to technology and smarter people than I was very early on in my career. These were guys, we had Russian mathematicians. You wonder where all the people from MIT go to work. This is where they went to work. And you realize how smart you're not, which is a very good thing because it makes you humble and it makes you want to learn if you're the right person for that environment. And I did that for almost 15 years. So after that, I stayed in technology, and it went from word translation, language translation to cybersecurity. So that was 5 years ago. And I would say after that, my LinkedIn profile started to blow up. I had people contacting me almost weekly with work, and that is still happening today. But I like where I work. I've been at this company for almost a year, and it's going very well.
The company that you work in, I imagine that can I say that you're probably in the older demographic of the population of the company?
Well, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I was on a con call, and the company I work for is headquartered in the UK. So we had people from Canada, the US, the UK. I think there was somebody from France there too. And I looked around the room on Zoom, right? This is all done remotely. And I realized the next oldest person was probably 40.
Right. You're
And
working with millennials.
yeah, and then after that, there were plenty of people in their 20s on this call.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a surprise to even me to look around the room and see that, the virtual room, and see that. It's just a reminder that we can do it, us older people. We can
Right.
still participate. We can still contribute at a high level, or at least a higher level. But I do think a lot of people stagnate.
Right.
I get what those millennials were telling you about older people, but we don't have to be that way. We can keep up until we choose not to. And I think that's the important thing here. It's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
You actually choose to keep doing the technology, keep learning, keep progressing, or you don't.
Right.
And if you just choose you don't want to do it, I get that too.
Yeah.
Retire,
Yeah.
have fun, enjoy it. You've earned it.
Right. So let me ask you this. So, in working in the technology industry, do you find that that transcends into your daily living in terms of the technologies that you use and are active on a day-to-day basis?
So I'm going to digress a little bit from when I think of technology and when a millennial thinks of technology, or some of the people you talk to, they think Instagram is technology. Well, Instagram is based on technology, but the actual interface and what you're using isn't very technical. So that's where I think the bum rap comes in for older people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we may not be on Instagram and Snapchat, or as my mom would make up names, Space Face or something like that, but we can be very aware of how they work. We just choose not to be on those social platforms. And suddenly you get branded as being a technophobe because you don't have an Instagram account. Well, it's just at my age, it doesn't interest me to have an Instagram account.
Right.
But do I know how it works? Yeah, I probably know better than they do how it works.
Yeah. I mean, it's socially a different context that we operate in, and that doesn't mean that we're not capable.
Correct.
I'm on Instagram, but it's not like I use it actively on a daily basis as my primary means of communication.
I have WhatsApp, I have Slack, I have Google Teams, I have Microsoft Teams. I've got everything on my phone to make these things work. And I do have Instagram and I have an Instagram account. I just don't use it. My wife keeps up on Instagram more than I do. And she's also, well, I'm not going to say how old she is, but she also enjoys staying up with technology.
It's interesting that you said it's a choice as to whether or not to stay up with it because Janet, you and I recently talked about how so many things in life are a choice.
Right.
Whether you choose to go down one path or another, whether you choose to ruminate over something or not.
Well, and how do you want to spend your time? I mean, learning about
That
new
limited time that we have
technology.
left that Greg talked
Yeah,
about.
I mean, learning about technology is going to take time. Is that where you want to put your hours that you have left?
I had a colleague who I really liked, and he was a few years older than I was. And he was the one who really clued me into it. It was probably in my early 50s. And he talked about going to work for this technology company, and he said, "Yeah, this is probably going to be the last technology that I want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go through learning another technology." And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"He's made a choice." He was 63, 64 at the time, and he said, "This is it. This is my last technology company." Could he have gone to another technology company after that and learned the technology? Absolutely, but he made the choice not to. He said, "I'm going to retire. I'm going to enjoy the fruits of my labor."
Like you said, it's a choice.
Yes.
And there is a ramp. I mean, I don't care how old you are. When you're
Yes.
learning a new technology, there is a ramp. I think maybe synapses fire a little more quickly when you're younger, and it may be easier to pick up something new. It'd be like learning a new language.
Right. I was just thinking the same thing. When you're younger, especially toddler age,
It can,
supposedly that's the best time to teach someone a new language is very young, where those neural pathways aren't sort of stuck, if you will.
So I started off in a creative field. I was a graphic designer. I'm a pretty good artist, but it's not where my career took me. But I did run marketing groups with artists on the staff. But when it comes to learning technology, for me, it's always you're trying to learn something new or how to do something, or you have an issue and you want to fix it. And you think of, well, how does this technology work to fix that issue that I have? And a perfect example is AI, right? Our company started rolling out AI, and we talked about AI a lot. We're in cyber defense, right? This is a big topic for us. And one of the things that I was struggling with was how to adopt AI in my job,
Mm-hmm.
which is a product marketing
Mm-hmm.
job. And there was like pushback, it's going to take over the world. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. Well, then eventually my company said to me, we can use AI. You're free to use AI. Here's the parameters you can use it. And I started to think, okay, here are the things that I do. Here's my job function. How can I leverage AI now
Right.
to my job function?
Mm-hmm.
And I adopted AI. I love AI. I use it all the time in my day to day. I understand how it works. I understand why it's important to me. And I also use it as a tool. But I chose to just be open minded about AI and say, okay, I've got to use this tool. So, how can it solve a problem for me? I made that choice to adopt it.
So
And now I love it.
give us an example of how you use it.
If I could for just 1 second,
Sure.
for our demographic, AI is artificial intelligence.
Oh, Joe. Okay, you're actually promulgating the myth.
It was
So,
a joke.
if
It was
you
a joke.
if you look at, I'm sure most of our
Disregard Joe's
listeners,
comments, please, everyone.
I'm sure most of us on this on this podcast have used Google, and you used to do
Sure.
searches in Google. And if you noticed, your searches in Google started to get progressively smarter,
Mm-hmm.
right? You used to put in a whole sentence or a paragraph describing something to find it. And now you're down to, well, I'm going to put a catchphrase in there, and it fills in all the blanks and it does all the thinking for me. That is like the progression of how we got to where we are now, where now it's programmed to learn and feed back what it has learned, right? So it's writing a sentence for you. You've asked it to write something. It is deciding based on millions of examples what the most likely perfect fit word would be for that next word in a sentence, right? And it just does that over and over again because it has learned how we write, how we speak, how we talk, how we research things, and it feeds it back to you. It's actually a compliment. It is really basing everything it knows on us.
Right, but it doesn't always get that right. Even autocorrect, I get frustrated because it's like, okay, first of all, I can't really see what I'm writing here, right? But
Where are my glasses?
yeah, where are my glasses? Why don't I up the font size on this?
There are things, AI hallucinations, those sorts of
Mm-hmm.
things, which are true things. What that means essentially is the AI, if it's not sure, will kind of make stuff up.
Right.
That's okay. You're the gatekeeper. You're not taking what AI does and push it out into the world. You're taking what AI does and then you're massaging it. You're adding your expertise
Right.
directly to it. I have never gotten anything from an AI that didn't need work after.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fantastic how quickly it gives you iterations to work with. It's spectacular. So, as far as adopting and understanding and using, again, I've made the choice that AI is part of my everyday industry, everyday work life now, and I'm having fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 60 plus years old, and
Right.
I don't have any issues trying to manipulate it. I can truly say my colleagues never say to me, "Oh, he's the old guy," or "Don't go to the old guy." Right? They rely on me to give them answers now,
Right.
and you can be
Well,
a
they don't
very
say it
much
to your face. And
you can very much be a high contributor, get paid well, and hopefully pay for your daughter's wedding in a year or so, and wait for the next big thing.
So that's the use of technology and being 60 plus. What about the culture of working in an industry where the average age is much younger, maybe half your age?
So I will say that it helps to have children that age, that working age. Right? My kids are 30 and 27. The things that they talk about are the things my colleagues talk about. They're just like my daughter. They're just like my son. And that's neither good nor bad. It's just something that is. So once you know that, you sort of you have to change a little bit, You can't go in wearing pleated khakis because you're going to stand out. Believe it or not, I've actually heard people complain about the president of one of my companies I work for because he was still wearing pleated khakis.
Really?
Yes.
What did they want him to wear?
Not pleated khakis.
Not pleated.
Jeans.
Khakis that aren't pleated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much out of date in their eyes.
I get it. I
Yes.
get it. Do you feel part of the gang at work? Or, I mean, I know a lot of work is remote now, so it's
You
different.
cannot push it. So if there's a work function and everybody's invited to that work function, it's perfectly okay. You can do whatever you want. I don't try to be part of the culture that goes out and drinks on a Thursday all the time. If I do go out, I would be the first one to leave, that sort of thing. I don't want to do that because I can't keep up with those people. Would they invite me? Yeah, I think by and large they still would. They would still welcome the company, but it's not that you're old, it's that you're more senior to them. And I think senior in a hierarchy of work.
Mhm.
That's a little bit intimidating to
Yeah,
them.
it's like inviting the boss. Do we really
Correct.
want the boss
Correct.
to come along?
No.
Exactly.
That's why we're drinking, because of the boss.
Right. Is this going to get back to the boss? Anything we do or say. So I'm sorry, but the reality is, as you get older, you do have to change your tactics at work.
But that's not a result of age. It's a result of the hierarchy that you mentioned.
Yeah, well, it would
The
be
two
hard
go
to-
hand in hand.
Correct.
Maybe
It
a
would be
little
hard
bit
to
of both.
separate them.
Mm.
Yeah, you don't get to that hierarchy if you're 22 years old.
Right.
You're the guy out drinking saying, oh, geez, I hope this doesn't get back to the boss.
Yes.
All right. Do you envision working in technology like your friend who said, this is the last technology company I'm going to work for? I don't want to learn more technology. Do you envision continuing?
I definitely envision 2 more years, guaranteed. After that, I'm going to have to make a choice. Or I don't have to make a choice. After that, I may make a choice.
You're going to decide to make a choice.
I definitely do not feel in any way that anybody is trying to force me out. When I do have gray in my beard, and when people interview me, they know that I'm at least a mature worker. I've never ran into any issues with getting hired or
I was
anything
just going
like
to ask
that.
you, because you said you've been working at this company
Yes.
less than a year.
It's a very young company, and I still got hired, and we have a couple of people that are mature, but not a lot. I think I'm the oldest person at the company at this point, which is weird in and of itself. But when you look at the demographic of the company, you can't be intimidated by the younger generation. You really have to just appreciate who they are, and they're different than you, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, they're only different than you in a superficial way. At the end, we're all pretty much, like we've always said, you heard the cliche, we're all the same underneath. We're all looking for the same things. Just they're at a stage where they've got 40 years of career in front of them.
And you've got 30 years behind you.
Yes. I've got 3 years in front of me. That's such a different perspective. And you have to appreciate that. You can't take that for granted. And I actually bring it up more than not when I'm talking to a colleague that's in their 20s and they want to ask me a question about this or that, and we're talking about them. I said, well, how do you want me to answer this? Because you've got a very different road ahead of you than I do. I always tell people, you're in a very different place than I am. You should be thinking about your career. Where you're working today is not going to be where you're working 30 years from today.
Right.
But you are going to be working somewhere in 30 years.
Yeah, I think this is one of the nice things about being in the older generation and working with younger people is that you can sort of be the wise one, if you will, and share your knowledge and your perspective and give
And not force it
advice
on them.
and not force it on them. But when there's a receptivity to that, it's a great learning exchange because you're learning about their perspectives and worries and desires and dreams. And you're also sharing your perspective and your experience. And it's a really nice exchange.
Perspective comes from, this is my art degree here, art training. Perspective comes from stepping away from something or getting more distance from it. That's a great way to get perspective. That's what 30 years of career does for you.
Exactly.
We have 3-point perspective. They're still on 2-point perspective.
Exactly.
I don't know what that is. All right, so I think the takeaway from this episode of 60 Plus is that it's a choice whether you want to adopt technology and use technology and understand technology or not. And that people that are 60 plus can do it if they're willing to do it and take that ramp. There's a ramp up to learning anything. I remember learning to drive a car. I was 16 years old. It takes time and effort and mental capacity and practice and practice and practice, right? And I think the same is probably true around technology.
When I think I told you this story, I was at Home Depot the other day, and there was a gentleman that was clearly older than I was.
Wow, he was old.
He was old, and he was a little overweight, very gray, going bald, nice disposition, just a good guy, just a good person you'd want working for Home Depot if I were the owner of Home Depot. And I asked him a question about something that was out of stock. Standing in front of something, there's clearly nothing left of this, right? And he says, "Well, let me check it out." And he pulls out his smartphone and he opens up the app and he goes, "Oh, there's 10 of them in the Northampton store if you want to get them there." It's like, this is clearly a gentleman that does not fear technology, was more than willing to pick it up and learn it and master it. My wife was with me and I looked at her after and said, "That's how I want to be too." This
Right.
guy has just picked it up, no fuss, no muss. This technology will help me do my job. And he learned.
Right.
So, Gregg, thanks for coming in to talk about working in technology and using technology at 60 plus. It's something we can all do. It's something, this is a podcast.
Right.
It's relatively new. We have new technology sitting in front of me.
Yeah,
I've been
working out
learning it.
bugs.
I've been learning how to run the technology. And I think it's fun.
I do too, but I also, when I look at you two, because I do know you're both, I don't know if young spirit's the way to describe it. The spirit you have is young, right? The spirit you have is adventurous and you want to do stuff. And I get that not everybody's going to be like that. And that's why I think the choice part is what we're talking about. When somebody says somebody's a dinosaur because they don't know technology, they don't understand that somebody made a choice at some point not to pick up that technology. They probably could do it if they wanted to. They've chosen not to.
Right. And we talked about the value and benefits of lifelong learning. And
Absolutely.
there's so many things that you could spend your time learning. And technology may just not be in your bandwidth to do. So, and that's fine. That's fine.
How can people get in touch with 60 plus, Janet?
Oh my God, is this a test?
It is.
60 plus podcast at gmail.com
And
is
it's
our email.
60 plus podcast, all spelled out.
Correct.
60 plus podcast at gmail.com. We have a Facebook page. And we hope you follow, like, and share the 60 plus podcast.
Yes, tell everyone.
Did you have anything else you wanted to talk with Gregg about? Or Gregg, did you have anything you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
I'm very impressed by you two. I think this is fun. I love it. I love the topic. I think you both do a great job with this. I felt very comfortable here, even though I'm old. You helped me get into the building. That was very nice.
When you get up from the chair, your knees will feel a little.
Well, that is true. That's not necessarily age. It's
Well, we
sports
really
injury.
appreciate you joining us today and taking the time to talk to us about this subject. And
You are welcome.
I think we busted it, right?
I think we did.
Yeah.
I think Gregg was a great example to bust this myth that 60 plus and technology don't mix. I think they mix very well. So
Thank you.
thank you, Gregg. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Yep. Bye.